Evening to Honorable Political Leader Mrs. Kamala Prasad, BSS of Senior Counsel. Good evening to both members of Parliament, Houses of Parliament. Good evening to those locked on, viewing, listening, streaming on the World Wide Web. And a special good evening to our UNC family, who is religiously locked on to all of the different programs that we have on a weekly basis. I am here this evening because we would have had a myriad of issues coming alive within the media, different forms of media within the public, as this government continues to implode, as the last speaker would have indicated. And I think with all of these issues weighing in and weighing on the Prime Minister's shoulders, he had to do something. We in the UNC are saying that he had to distract from all of the issues taking place, unfortunately, with those divers, that tragedy with those divers in Paria, and all of the other issues with respect to rising crime and issues in Wassa and TSTT. And with all of these things weighing on his shoulders, what do you old people just say? Confession is good for the soul. So he comes out and he confesses that he was the person who ran to President's house to have that merit list, that infamous merit list, retracted. Now listen. Many persons within the party would have spent considerable amount of time speaking about this issue. We would have had the Honorable Political Leader properly well prosecuting this issue, MP Munilal prosecuting this issue, and most recently at a press conference held yesterday, because we always have something going on here in the UNC, surgically and clinically, MP Hussain and MP Rambali dealt with this issue. So I won't spend too much time on that at all. What I would want to reiterate tonight is this. When you think about the constitution of the Police Service Commission and how their jobs are to be done with respect to procuring a certain instructions with respect to the legal notice drafted and done by the Parliament, by the government, and then they have to go about this rigorous process to ensure a police commissioner is selected, and then they have to forward that list now to President's house, and the only time that the Parliament, that the Prime Minister, that the government, and anybody else other than the Police Service Commission would be well aware as to who is on that merit list and who tops that merit list is when the list is actually sent to President's house. So I want to squarely ask the Prime Minister tonight, how you know when Bliss Seepersad was going to go to President's house? How did you know what the composition and constitution of that list would have looked like? How did you know that Gary Griffith was on top of that list, that forced you then to run to President's house to retract that list? Because you went there to retract the list. The President came out, because she had some questions to answer as well, and she indicated that the list was delivered. And then in a turn of events, the list was retracted by the Chairman, Bliss Seepersad. And we are asking the Chairman tonight as well to squarely, why did you do that? Were you coerced? Were you instructed? Were you threatened in any way, form, or fashion? And if it is any of those three issues, you need to come out and indicate to the public, come clean, because that is misbehavior in public office. And the Prime Minister would then have some serious criminal questions to answer as it pertains to his conduct. We all know that in terms of providing information, as he likes to say that he did on that day, there's a particular way to do it. Reduce your concerns into writing. Many persons have said that to you. You have done that on 2 previous occasions when you had issues with the same Gary Griffith. So why did you clandestinely do what you did on that fateful day? Now that you've done that, there are certain inferences, negative inferences that can be drawn based upon your actions. And pursuant to all of this storm that has taken place based upon that confession, you had again, in the dead of the night, in the dead of the day actually, a cabinet reshuffle. MP Amin spoke about it, a reshuffling of a pack of jokers. And we have said that on a number of occasions, that we are not really satisfied with respect to that reshuffle at all, you know. All across the sectors, the length and breadth of this country, various ministries are failing. You have all these issues related to crime and criminality in this country, and Minister Hines is still there. You have this unfortunate debacle with respect to Paria and those divers, and Minister Young is there. You have all of these failures with respect to Cry Terry Dial Singh, and he is still there. You have all these issues with respect to TSCT and Wassa and Gonzalez is still there. All of them are failing. And so a reshuffle is not enough. And we join with our political leader to say to you that the right thing to do is to call the election, because all of you need to go. Let the people decide who they want to lead them. And those persons to lead them sit right here in this room here, led by our political leader, Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bissessar. We won that mandate. But there's a particular joker that was reshuffled, that was fired, because I see a lot of people talking about demotion and demotion. Hey, he get fired. He get fired. He was sacked, as the English people like to say. He lost his work, right? So he was fired as Attorney General. And we know why. I mean, we've been saying it for a number of times, a number of reasons. This man has constantly brought poor legislation to the parliament, wasted parliamentary time. You know how many sessions as a party we've sat down day and night procuring and preparing amendments to move to fix bad legislation that he has brought to the parliament, just so that the end user, you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, get some good legislation. That's what we've been doing, and we've been indicating to you, we've been indicating to the Prime Minister and the government as a whole that Faris needed to go. So, he went. But now, based upon some literature that came in the form of a media release yesterday, and some letters of which I have here, we know exactly why Faris was fired. In what can only be described as an unprecedented situation, you had Faris Al-Rawi, the then Attorney General, having an issue with someone called the CPC, the Chief Parliamentary Council. Now, some of you will be hearing about this. You're not entirely certain what is going on, who the CPC is, how bills are done, and I'll give you a little breakdown here tonight. So a bill starts through policy decision by the cabinet. The cabinet gets together, whichever ministry have a little bill that they want done to effect in their ministry, they go to cabinet, a policy is drafted, a cabinet note is drafted, it is then sent to the CPC so the bill could be drafted and then sent on to the House, be it the Senate or the lower house, for it to be properly tabled. That is how it is done. That is the precedent of this thing. And the CPC is the Chief Parliamentary Council. In this country, he's embodied in a man called Ian McIntyre. Now, Ian McIntyre is a well-respected fellow. He served successive administrations, I think about 5 or 6 attorney generals. And he's a senior counsel as well, too. So Ian McIntyre is not as the young people say, he no jokey man. He know what he doing. And you had and there's a certain talk about Ian McIntyre. If you ever met the man, he has a very quiet demeanor. And the talk within the parliament is that Ian McIntyre doesn't say much. But when he does in fact speak, you better had listen, because he know what he's talking about. So you had playing out between these two parties, the AG and the CPC, a war of words, a tussle. And in and around September 2020 of last year, you had the CPC holding a meeting with his department to tell them, here what's going on. You are to continue with respect to the precedent that has been playing out in this country for decades, which is we only draft in legislation when a cabinet note or the Prime Minister instructs us to do so. We're not drafting any legislation when Faris say to do so. And what occurred around that time as well is that Faris Al-Rawi decided to say, to hell with the cabinet. He don't care about cabinet responsibility. To hell with the Prime Minister. He don't care about that man either. And to hell with the CPC. And he took a bill or a position that he sent to Jackie Sampson, the clerk of the House. And she as well too is a well-respected individual within the parliament. Many of us know her. And when she see this thing come in her email, in her inbox, she had to say to herself, this man is mad. How could you be doing this? Where's the input of the CPC? Where's the cabinet note to accompany this thing? And she included the CPC in the email. And the CPC had to tell her, you are doing the correct thing. We have to scrap this business. And what took place thereafter is that Faris take that as a diss. And the to and fro between the both of them continued until March 11th of this year, when Faris drafted a letter threatening the CPC, threatening to suspend him if he didn't retract certain instructions that he gave to his department, that he gave to the deputy CPC at the point in time, and that he now was supposed to follow unequivocally any order or instruction dictated to him by the real dictator, Faris al-Rawi. And what did the CPC do? This man they call Ian McIntyre, this serious man, this senior counsel, well, he wrote him back. And here's what he said in his letter on March 14. I'll just take particular excerpts. Because people like to say that the UNC say, and the UNC this, and the UNC that. Well, here what's going on, brothers and sisters. We didn't say, McIntyre say. And look at here in black and white. So McIntyre say, I am constrained to report to the Judicial and Legal Service Commission the current impasse between the AG and the Chief Parliamentary Council, which has serious implications for good governance, the best interests of the Legislative Drafting Department, and the capability and efficiency of all ministries and departments. That's what McIntyre say. McIntyre went on to say as well too, at a meeting of the legal staff of the Legislative Drafting Department on September 3rd, 2020, it was agreed that the Legislative Drafting Department would no longer facilitate the Attorney General's preferred modus operandi of drafting legislation without cabinet-approved policy instructions and retrofitting the policy to reflect the draft legislation. You hear what he's telling you there? You know what modus operandi is? Your general mode of conduct. So the Attorney General's or the former Attorney General's mode of conduct was to draft his own thing, give instructions without the cabinet approval, without the prime ministerial approval, and you must follow him. So this is no longer the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. This is the Republic of Faris al-Rawi. That's what he wanted. And the CPC say, no, he ain't taking that. He went on to say, the CPC, McIntyre, not the UNC, it should be noted that the practice of drafting legislation on the basis of cabinet-approved policy instructions is a long-established and well-known principle and practice in Trinidad and Tobago and the Commonwealth. So it's not only in Trinidad. This thing happening all throughout the Commonwealth. It's not only Mickey Mouse, Trinidad and Tobago doing this. This is a settled and established precedent that Faris al-Rawi wanted to do away with. These are serious implications. And what transpired thereafter is that in the correspondence, McIntyre also indicates that, listen, there are limited circumstances where we'll depart from that precedent. When there are exceptional circumstances like a pandemic, or if the Prime Minister indicates to us that he wants X, Y, and Z done. That's what McIntyre said. So clearly, with respect to this reshuffle, what we've taken from this correspondence is that Faris al-Rawi thought that he was the Prime Minister. And Rowley, like, he get a hint of that, and he decided to show him who's real boss here, who is the jefe, and he bump him down. He fire him as being Attorney General, because he not only pretending, he acting and writing people as if he's the Prime Minister. And in particular, what really tipped this thing over the scales is that Faris al-Rawi decided, based upon what McIntyre is saying again, not the UNC, to send a piece of legislation. And you know what that legislation was about? It didn't concern the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs. It concerned the Ministry of National Security. Right? So McIntyre is saying that Faris said, to hell with Minister Hines. Now, if there's anything we may agree with Faris on, it might be that. Right? Come on, Hines is a waste of time. I saw some picture going around the other day. I couldn't believe it. I thought, you know, some mischievous person was photoshopping it. That Hines was standing up in the hot sun and there was a well-dressed gentleman with an umbrella over his head. That couldn't be real. I mean, I guess somebody else will speak about that. It couldn't be real. In any event. So he sidestepped the Minister of National Security. He sidestepped the Permanent Secretary. He sidestepped the Council with the responsibility of preparing those things in the Ministry of National Security. And he sent it for the CPC to deal with. He tried to instruct the CPC to deal with that. And the CPC stopped him dead in his tracks. And you know what that bill had to deal with? That was intercepting of communication. So he come in to spy on you. And he don't want the cabinet to know that because he wanted to spy on them as well too. Right? And what happened? What happened? The CPC went on to say that Faris's actions would amount to certain things. It would have been inconsistent with the Code of Ethics under the LPA, the Legal Profession Act. Man, you are a lawyer for so long. You spent so long in law school. You don't know the ethics of the Legal Profession Act by now? He went on to say that Faris's actions would have bypassed the role and responsibilities of ministers, permanent secretaries, chief technical officers, heads of legal departments, and other senior public officials. Faris's actions would have also institutionally weakened the capacity, capability, and efficiency of government ministries. He went on to further indicate Faris's actions would have resulted in many legislative gaps. Well, we knew that already because we was dealing with it in the parliament all the time, which would require further legislative action before the implementation of the relevant legislation. He went on to say that Faris's actions would have resulted in a lack of due respect and appreciation for the role and function of senior officials in the public service and the deterioration of relationships and morale among legal professionals and other senior officials, which would further institutionally weaken the public service. All of this, McIntyre say, not the UNC, but the UNC supporting what McIntyre is saying. And after that, Al-Rawi then decides to write a letter threatening to suspend McIntyre for what he has said. We, as a responsible opposition, have been calling on the government to suspend the board of PARIA during this investigation concerning that debacle, that travesty with those divers. They can't suspend that board yet. But Faris Al-Rawi doing the wrong thing, McIntyre doing the right thing, and he calling on him to be suspended. That is what I'm playing out for good governance in this country. The CPC eventually concluded by indicating that the legislative drafting department is merely seeking to perform its functions with integrity, thing that Faris don't know about, professionalism, thing that he don't know about as well too, in accordance with a long-established principle of good governance and the standards of the legal profession. My grave concern is that if the coercive behavior of the Attorney General is allowed to go unchecked, the consequences would be disastrous for the legislative drafting department, the public service, and the country as a whole. That's what McIntyre concluded by saying. And what we want to say and add to that tonight is this. PM Rowley, you knew what was going on. You were CC'd on all of these documents. And the best thing you could do is to move this man, to fire this man from the AG's office, and to send him to local government. Playing musical chairs with a dangerous man like that, who has no respect for persons in the public service, is not sufficient. You need to fire him altogether and get him out. This is not Darrell Smith 2.0. You can't move him from one ministry and put him somewhere else because he'll go there and bully the people there as well too. It is imperative that you fire him now. And the United National Congress has gotten a mandate from its political leader. We are going to continuously call for the removal of Faris Al-Rawi from the parliament. He deserves no place there with this type of conduct that is in black and white. And we have told you this, that in amalgamation, the actions of the Prime Minister, the actions of Faris Al-Rawi are attacks on our constitution. They have no respect for the democracy, no respect for transparency, accountability, good governance, ethics, and public servants in this country. And we told you that. We told you that they would come for you. We told you as public servants, they are coming for you. When they came for Petrotrin, you all sat there and you did nothing. When they raised gas, you didn't quarrel, you didn't strike. When they come in for TSCT, you're not saying anything. When they come in for WASA, you're staying quiet. They come in for our constitution, you remain silent. They are coming for our public servants. It is time that you stand up and say yes. Say yes to the UNC. Say yes to the only political party that can bring good governance back to this country. Say yes to our political leader, Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar, who will ensure that all of those things, our constitution, our democracy, is safeguarded as a proper Prime Minister should do. I thank you, my friends.